What's up, guys? It's your girl Hassana back with another episode of The Elephant in a Pink Room. I pray that this episode finds you guys in good spirit and in good health, and that you are taking the opportunity to embrace what this season has for you. For those of you who are listening to me audibly, this episode is actually recorded, so you could go to my YouTube channel and watch it visibly if that's what you want to do. And what I'll do for now on is that I'll just put in the show notes whether it is on YouTube or not. Even though I plan on, continuing making videos for YouTube, there may be times that I don't. But I don't want to have to keep saying it or whatever. So that's how you guys will know if there is a YouTube video for this episode. So today I just want to chat it up with you guys because this week I have had some kind of week. And I've just been noticing that, time is flying, but it's kind of like it's flying so fast, and I just find myself just doing. But I just need to be able to breathe, right? And a lot of times, we hear people talk about rest. We hear a lot of the things about self-care and all of this other stuff. And I just wonder if people really understand how important it is to be able to take time for yourself, to be able to relax your brain, to be able to kind of soothe your emotions, and be able to kind of reflect and come to grips with what's going on. Sometimes in the chase and in the go, there's a lot of steps that we don't really necessarily understand or realize that we're taking, or things that's being done that we haven't really had time to reflect on. And what happens to me is that my brain starts to go on overload. And probably because I'm naturally a thinker, I'm always in my head, and I'm always kind of thinking of this, thinking of that. And what I've noticed is that you guys hear me talk a lot about procrastination, and a lot about discipline, and consistency, and all of those other things. And what I'm starting to really understand is how my emotional strength is tied very close to those things, right? Because when I started to think and try to dig into why, I could have a good run and then I stop, and it's always what I started to realize is that it's always my emotions, is how I feel in that time. And what will happen is that, sometimes I could be super motivated when I'm happy, when, I have the actual time, or, when I just feel a certain type of way, it's easier for me to go. Sometimes even disappointments can push me to create, and to move. Disappointments, there's sometimes a negative energy as well. But what I started to understand is how much our emotions really be pimping us, and how our emotions really be driving our actions. And I remember before, I learned that emotions are there as kind of a gauge to kind of help you to understand how you feel about something particular. But we're not supposed to let the emotions actually drive. We're not supposed to take those emotions and act out of our emotions. So that's something that I've been kind of working on right now. But as you start to work on one thing, other things start to uncover, and you start to go deeper and deeper and deeper into why certain things happen. So I know, for myself, I have a very creative mind, and I have creative spikes or whatever, streaks or whatever. And then sometimes I'll just fall off. It could be from pure distraction, or it could be my emotions. But I realize how much my emotions play a part in that, and how much Me kind of not being consistent has to do what how I feel in that moment. And I've always heard kind of like with discipline, and like you're not always going to be motivated. So discipline is important because with discipline you're going to do something regardless of whether or not you want to do it. And I've learned that lesson with working out. Like I don't always want to work out, but I've become disciplined enough, and sometimes it's important to put things into place also that help you be disciplined. So like for me, it's doing my workout classes, right? I do a weightlifting class every Monday and Wednesday. So I know that I'm going to show up whether I want to or not because that's just how I am. But if you give me an option, I might not, And like for me, yeah, I pay for the class. And I've disciplined myself enough to make sure that I go to every single class. But then there's times where I know that I need to do things that I don't want to do and I won't do it. So it's just like, how do you take though the actions that you use in one space and use it across the board? And it's just like planning and making sure that you come up with ways that will keep you accountable, because accountability is a really really huge thing. And what I like about accountability, if it's done correctly, is that it's not emotion driven. Accountability is not, well, at least it's not supposed to be. It's not driven on excuses and how you felt at the moment. It's really driven on like, these are the facts and that's it. Like, these are the facts, that's it. And when you're able to do that, then you're able to reflect on what you did wrong and be able to make adjustments and to kind of like try to change those things. And that's one thing that I'm trying to do, is just trying to be more consistent. But I do realize, like, even some people who are like emotional eaters, right? I'm actually an emotional eater. So it's like my appetite depends on my emotions, how I feel at the time. Now, I'm one of the people, like, if everything's going well, like, I'm not really thinking about food. Like, I'm just on a high. But, like, when I get stressed out or, just feeling kind of like, um, not distracted, because distraction doesn't really make me want to eat. But if I feel defeated in a way, like if I feel defeated and I just feel kind of like frustrated, that'll cause me to eat. But I can't let my emotions set me back, because that's what happens. It sets you back. It sets you back. It sets you back. So what I'm learning now is like how to build my emotional strength, right? And what I mean by that is just being strong emotionally, you know, and it doesn't say that you're not going to have certain feelings, but it's just like, no, you have to still have enough strength to push past those things. So when you think about someone when we think about strength, right, we always think about kind of like people who could lift heavy weights, who are visibly strong. But the way that they get there is through working out, exercising, whatever it is that they're doing. And even though, because I remember like when I started working out, like when I first kind of started working out, it was like, y'all be sore all the time. Like, are you always sore? And you see people who lift weights, who body build, and they just going higher and higher in their reps. And it's like, but how do you work out like that if you're always sore? But what I realize is that they push past that. And it's not saying we pushing past injuries and we going to further damage ourselves, but we're going to have enough wisdom to be able to say, like, you know what? I could go that extra mile. I could take more time, doing one thing in order to get it done. Like, let me pace myself, because pace has a lot to do with it. Let me pace myself. Let me make sure that I'm not being overly ambitious when it comes down to whatever it is that I'm doing, that it almost is impossible for me to be able to complete. because then once it becomes impossible for you to be able to complete at that capacity, then you get deterred, right? And now your emotions start to kick up. You start getting frustrated because now you feel like you're never going to reach this accomplishment that you want to reach. So I think that there's a lot of things that we need to put in place to be able to build this emotional strength. But the strategy has to be very realistic. It has to be very realistic. And a lot of times, like, we get, first of all, a lot of times I think also we look at a lot of people and at their accomplishments, and we don't really know like the time frame. So just to give you an example, you know, so like with my weight loss journey, my journey to becoming more physically fit, you know, toned and things like that. Like I started noticing even on Instagram, like you'll see these before and after pictures, right? And they'll be wonderful pictures, like the transformations will be tremendous. But then I started to think like how long did it take from them to get to the from the before to the after? Right? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, give 30, 40, 30, 60, 90 days, like 1 to 3 months. Like, but it's just like, is that realistic? Like, is that how long it was taking? And I know I had did a clip on my Instagram page, which I need to go back to, but it's called like the chat box. And I talked about, you know, how we get caught up in the long story short, you know, the long story short of things, like people can't really sit on social media and on some of these platforms and give you A to Z, right, of how they did things. But what they do is they give you the before, the after, and they give you a little bit of twerks in between. So now it's just like, okay, realistically, how long does it take to reach these goals? Can I obtain these goals? Number one, you know, like, is it really feasible? Like, what is the end goal? You know, what really is the end goal? And I think a lot of times we need to scale back in order to really deal with distractions, procrastination, um consistency and things like that. I think we need to scale back some. We need to scale back, and we need to ask the questions that need to be asked. So I'm just gonna give you some questions that need to be asked, I guess. We just gonna wing it and see what happens. But I think the number one important thing to do is to really understand what you're trying to accomplish, right? You need to understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then you need to kind of dig into um the intentions behind it, right? Because then what this is all going to do is it also is leading you to the emotional part of it, because it's like, okay, what is your intent behind it, right? And then you once you learn your intent behind it, it's like, okay, so how do I want to feel when I accomplish this? And then you have to be realistic about kind of like how the emotions that you could probably go through during the process. And then that'll help you to kind of like prepare yourself to be able to deal with those. So it's like, okay, let's say for instance, I want to run a marathon, right? So I know I need to train for this marathon. I don't know how marathons go. I've heard people say like 10K, whatever. We just want to say a marathon. So I want to run this marathon, but I know I need to prepare myself and train for it because number one, I'm not a runner, and number two, I need to be able to get physically fit. So we know that these are facts, right? So now it's like, how do I prepare myself for that? So it's easy to be like, oh, I'm gonna run 10 miles a day. I'm gonna make a goal where as though I'm gonna run 300 miles in 30 days, and that's gonna help me build my stamina in order to be able to get through this race, right? But then it's just like, okay, you gotta think realistically. What if it rains? So you said you're gonna go outside every day and you're gonna run 10 miles a day. What if it rains? How do you get past that? How do you push through that? What if you're on your period, and you're not going to feel like running? What if you get caught up at work? Work gets busy. That your job could get kind of hectic. So there's times where you may be so exhausted from work, or you may be frustrated because your work is a sideshow and there'll be a whole bunch of stuff going on here. So these are things that you have to kind of consider, right? You have to kind of consider, okay, why am I doing this, and what emotions do I want to feel once this is accomplished? Because I don't think that we necessarily take into account, you know, the purpose. Like, like, why you want to run a race? It could be that, it could be something emotionally tied to it. It could be something financially tied to it, or whatever the case is, or professionally tied to it, whatever the case is. But then you have to take that into consideration, because another thing too is, like, when you make goals that aren't really kind of like contingent to um fulfillment for you, then it's going to be easy not to do it. It's going to be very, very easy not to do it. You got to take into consideration, like, okay, if I'm going to do that, I have to make sure I have enough energy. So now I have to make sure that I am watching what I eat. One thing about me, I know during my menstrual, like, I have crazy cravings for, like, candy, well, sweets, salty stuff, potato chips, things like that. So when I am kind of like on my nutritional journey and things like that, like, I make sure that I have things to substitute that. Things that's going to satisfy that craving. So one of the things that I get a lot are like protein chips, right? Or I'll find like a low carb potato chip or something like that. Or I'll find like a no sugar, a sugar free candy. You know, I find those type of things, and they really satisfy those cravings. So I have to make sure that I have them on deck. Whether I have them, I gotta make sure I have some at home. I gotta make sure I have some at my desk, because I might get in the mood at work. And at my job, I have a vending machine at my job, but of course, it doesn't have anything, nutritional. Like, I mean, I think the best thing they got in there is peanuts, and I don't like peanuts. So I like peanut butter, but I don't like peanuts. But that's one thing. Like, we have to really, really check our intentions, because I feel like when you can find a why, and I've talked about this before, for something, it makes it easier for you to be able to see it through. And then once you do that, number two, again, plan. Like, we have to become more in tune with our emotions too, to kind of see what our triggers are, to kind of see like what puts us in funky moods. Stay away from that. What makes us more exciting, more joyous? Like, for me, so just to give an example, like, for me, I'm a coffee girl. I'm a coffee girl. I don't know. I probably need to stop it, but I love coffee, right? So I know on my best days, normally, like when I'm on my way to work, if I have a cup of coffee and I'm drinking my coffee on my way to work, it prepares me. Like, it kind of like jump starts my day. But lately, I've been waiting until I get to work, because we have a coffee machine at work or whatever. And I'm like, it makes more sense to just wait till I get to work and get coffee, as opposed to spending money on coffee, because my coffee machine at home broke. So I need a new one. But with that being said, I know for me, getting up in my car, cup of coffee, gospel music, and praying, that those are usually when I have my best days, right? So, and when I leave on time, and when I get to work early. So those are usually my best days. But I know one of my triggers for kind of like a not so good day is when I'm running late. Now I'm rushing, I'm in traffic, I haven't had my coffee, I gotta run into work, clock in real quick. Now I'm rushing to the kitchen. So me being rushed gives me anxiety, like rushing and like trying to beat the clock. I don't thrive in that gives me anxiety, and it kind of messes my day up, right? So that's why I try to make sure that I am on time. I try to make sure that I, like in the beginning of the week, what I'll do is usually on the weekends, I'll kind of like pull my outfits, put them to the side because it's nothing for me to iron them, and if it don't need to be ironed, that's even better. But I do things like that to make sure that I'm set up so like the little nuisances that might tie up my day. So I try to meal prep so that way I could just grab my meals in the morning. I could just grab my meals, throw them in my bag. I'll even have my workout clothes out, so I could just throw everything in my bag. The night before, I might prepare my work bag with workout clothes, whatever I need for the next day. That's what helps me to be successful, because then I could get up on time and I could leave out, and I won't have to worry about trying to hurry up and make breakfast, because it's like, oh, I know I need to make breakfast because I'm not going to buy food out because I don't want to. So let me make breakfast, but that's extra time put on my plate. So planning really, really helps me, and not just planning like a physical written out plan, but planning emotionally too, because I know what my triggers are. I know what makes my days great, and I know what makes my days challenging. And then also another part of that too is knowing how to shift it too. So what I mean by that is that if you do start off in with a day that may be challenging, right? How do I shift my emotions in the middle of the day? Like how do I shift it to where as though I could get back on track emotionally, right? And that may mean, okay, you need to take some time to pray. You need to take some time to take a walk somewhere, or you have to figure out what works for you. With me, usually it's like listening to music. Sometimes I sit at my desk and I just like listen to music, or turn an audible book on or something, like to kind of like shift it. And then that way, and the reason why I'm saying is also and especially when it comes down to the actions that we, the behaviors that we have, is because a lot of them are driven by our emotions. So if my procrastination is going to be contingent on the fact that let's say for instance, I'm so tired, from all of this stuff that I have to do. It's just like, no, just plan it. You want to create content. Okay, just plan your content so that way you could just swoop, 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 and you don't have to worry about that. Or making sure that, okay, you might not feel like doing it, but on your lunch break, go and do some things on your lunch break. Like it's just a bunch of things that could be done in order to control our emotions, because I feel like that our emotions are the factors that really, really kind of like get to us, and it hinders us, essentially. Like a lot of times it hinders us. So once you kind of like started planning things out and started to kind of like dig into these emotions, your triggers, your and things that kind of like drives you and things like that, another thing that you want to do is you want to just make sure that the things that you want to accomplish aren't emotion driven, right? And I mean, okay, let me explain that. Let me explain that. Now, the first thing that I say, I was like, you kind of gotta want to check your intentions on why you want to do these things, and kind of want to know how you want to feel once it's accomplished, right? Because a lot of times we chase things without it, and it's not going to fulfill us. And then what happens is once it's accomplished, we go after the next thing. Like it's like something constant, constant, constant. So if I can't want something because I feel like once I achieve it, I'm gonna be happy. Like the goal for what we're doing should not be contingent on an emotion, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, I want to lose weight because I want to feel sexy, I want to feel confident. No, you have to find another way to feel all of that, because what happens when you lose weight and you still don't get that fulfillment, that emotional fulfillment? Like what happens at that point? So now you went through all of that, and you still feel empty, and then what happens is that you go back to how you were before. Now you're miserable again. So that's why I'm saying, like, we have to stop putting the pedal on our lives, because we think that once we achieve specific things that it's going to make us happy, it's going to bring us joy, we're going to be fulfilled. Like, that may not happen. So the why has to be deeper, and it has to be outside of our emotions. Like, one thing for me is that, I want to have financial freedom, but it's not because, oh, what I'm gonna say this. At one time, it was because I felt like if I had a bunch of money, if I was financially stable, like, I wouldn't have any worries, I'll be happy, this, that, and the other. But I realized that that's not really true. But I know now that I want to have it because I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to help my children, my family. I want to be able to help people that's in need, because I know how important that is, because there were people who helped me. There were people who helped me. There were people that have brought me food, and I was hungry, but they probably don't even know that. You know what I'm saying? But they had the means to do it, and they just like, oh, let's go get something to eat. I'm gonna pay for you. And those are blessings that I want to be able to give to other people. So I think that when your intentions behind wanting things are more when it's outside of yourself and out of fulfilling yourself, and it's really for the uplifting of other people, like, I think that that's usually better. Even if, like, with some people think that losing weight, or and things like that, are kind of like um vain vain things to shoot for. Like, they think that, oh, you just want to look good. But for some people, it could be more of, I want to make sure that I'm at my best physically, to be able to help other people, to be able to go through vigorous schedules where I may have to go to work and then afterwards go to a ministry and feed the homeless. Like, I want to be able to sustain, I want to be able to stand on my feet for 12 hours. Like, we don't know what these things are. And for some people, it's for their mental state too, going back to emotions, for their mental state. So it has to be something outside of your emotions for the reason that you want to do things. And I really would encourage that. So I would say, as we navigate through life, I think that we always have to try to figure it out. We have to try to figure out ways to become more intentional, and to become, more strategic with things that we do. Because a lot of times we just winging things, we winging things, and it's just like you going on this hamster wheel. But sometimes you gotta sit in your thoughts, you gotta sit in your feelings, your emotions, and all of that stuff. And you have to really, like, sort things out and figure out the best way. Because even going back to the episode that I did about showing up as your authentic self, like, that's how you find your authentic self. You find your triggers, you find the things that make you happy, you find out, what drives you, what motivates you, you find out what you want to do, like, who you are supposed to be. And these are way, and once you do that, like, you have no problem being confident, you have no problem showing up in spaces. Fear won't even be a part of your vocabulary anymore, because you're so busy just being who you are, and it's so natural that you don't have to have the fear of failing. Because a lot of times the fear of failing comes from you feeling like you're in a position that you're not supposed to be in, feeling like you're doing something that you're not supposed to do, that you don't have the capacity to pull off, and it's really kind of like driven by insecurities. It's driven by like, you just don't feel that you are capable of doing these things. So that's why I think that it's important in this time frame to kind of like start to deal with those things, start to unpack some of these things, so that you could get rid of. And I feel like that's how we free ourselves. Like, that's how we become delivered. Like, you have to be truthful, you have to be honest in order to be delivered from these things. So I just wanted to chat with you guys about that a little bit. I'm going to go. I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna hold you guys for too long, but I'll put the information down in the show notes of how to contact me, to follow me on my social medias, like and share if you feel like this topic or any of the other topics that I have is really good for someone else that they could get use out of it. And I hope you guys enjoy the content too. Also, don't feel free to kind of like reach out to me, like if you wanted to hear any specific topics or any questions that you guys have. Just reach out to me. All of that information will be down in the show notes. And I am also working on some more kind of like fashion content. I've been just trying to kind of like get some things together, and to get back into that fashion content, because that's another one of my passions. And I know that lately I've been talking more about lifestyle and faith and lifestyle topics, and I do have some fashion things for you guys. So well, you guys will get that content soon. So I'm gonna let you guys go. Until next time, keep it stylish.